Welcome back for another online exclusive. As you all know, on February 14th, 2021, Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church unknowingly preached his last sermon, at least for a little while. After months of complying with provincial health standards set forth by the Alberta provincial government, you'll remember that Grace Life's leadership team began to see the negative mental and spiritual impacts of the lockdowns and on limiting services for their local community. After prayerful deliberation, consideration, and consultation with medical professionals in their direct community, they decided to risk jumping feet first into controversy by going against provincial health protocols in order to resume gatherings for the sake of their people. On February 16th, Pastor Coates drove himself to a meeting at the request of police, where he was then detained and imprisoned for refusing to agree to stop holding the services. His lawyers from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms have been working tirelessly for Pastor Coates' release as he has been awaiting his trial in May. In early March, his bail review was denied, but in a turn of events just recently, most of the charges have now been dropped and he could now be released in the next few days, perhaps as early as Friday. His wife, Erin Coates, was with us shortly after his initial detainment, and I'm honored to have her back with us again today to give an update on what's happening. And she's joined by the president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, John Carpay, who will also give us an update from his perspective on the legal side of things. So let's get to it. Well, welcome back to the show, Erin and John. This feels somewhat providential here. We actually had this interview scheduled before some big news that just hit today. First of all, welcome. John, would you give us a quick update on what's happening here?
Well, the Justice Center's lawyers have been in negotiations with the Crown, or basically the Alberta government, and the Crown has agreed to withdraw all of the charges but one. So they're withdrawing one of the charges for violating the health order. They're also withdrawing the charge of failing to comply with the undertaking that the police imposed on Pastor Coates that he never really agreed to, but he was still criminally charged with breach of an undertaking. And so those charges have been withdrawn, and within a few days, this will go before a judge. It is highly likely that the judge will accept a joint submission from the Crown and the defense that Pastor Coates would pay a $100 fine as a penalty for violating a health order. The other health order charge, though, is going to trial May 3rd, and that's extremely important because really it won't be Pastor Coates on trial as much as it will be the government's health orders themselves will be on trial for violating our charter rights and freedoms. And the government's going to have to produce evidence in court to justify these health orders that are violating our rights and freedoms. So that will be the trial in May. So we anticipate that Pastor Coates will be released from jail in the very near future. And I'm thrilled.
Wow, well, good work. Erin, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling a wave of emotion. I'm obviously excited. I'm so thankful for all of the work of the JCCF lawyers and what they've done. But my greatest moment of excitement will be when I finally get to hug him and see him face to face. So that's the moment I am going to save my excitement for. So that's how I feel right now. I am excited.
Yeah, you've barely had opportunity to process before we kind of hit record here. So congratulations. And thank you so much just for the stance that you've taken. Many of our viewers will know that it was a few weeks ago we did an interview together. That interview went a little bit viral. I think it's up to about 130,000 views now on YouTube. You shared your journey and everything that's kind of been happening or had been happening up to that point. You've done dozens of interviews since then. What has the response overall been from, the broader community, to those interviews and to what you and James and the church there have been going through?
Well, thankfully, the majority of responses towards me personally has been overwhelmingly positive. I think people kind of see the secondary cause of what we're doing is fighting for their freedom. And again, I've had people from back home in Ontario contact me, just thankful for what we're doing, what the JCCF is doing. And although this for us is about the worship of Christ and his headship over his church, I think they see that we're fighting for their freedom, and just how detrimental the lockdowns. The more and more information about the lockdowns are coming in, and it's really devastating, and people are really starting to see that. And so I think the majority of comments I get is overwhelmingly positive.
Well, and have you had a chance to talk with James? Do you talk to him daily? Have you had a chance to talk with him today yet?
I did. I had about 20 minutes with him this morning, and he's excited. He didn't really sleep last night, so he spent a lot of time up praying. And so, yeah, I've been able to talk to him.
Well, I can't imagine the stories that he'll have to tell, once you guys are reunited. So, John, I want to go back to what you said about how this upcoming court case in May is really important because it's really the government on trial to prove that the lockdowns have been, justified. Now, isn't this a similar conversation that's being had in the courts right now in British Columbia with the 3 churches that are taking Bonnie Henry and the provincial government there to court?
Yes, it's a similar issue in every province. The British Columbia case was focused quite narrowly on the unfair discrimination between restaurants. You could have 6 people from 6 different families could all sit together at the same table, not socially distanced, not wearing masks. And that's fine by the chief medical officer and the politicians. But while restaurants are open and 6 strangers can sit together at a table, at the same time, all houses of worship in British Columbia were closed down by the government. And even churches that were willing to comply fully with all the capacity limits and masks and social distancing and everything else, they were still shut down. So the case in British Columbia has been argued, and we're waiting for a decision. But it was not a broad challenge to the lockdowns. We didn't go after things like these PCR tests, which were never designed to diagnose COVID. We didn't do an extensive trial on all of the lockdown harms. It was a very focused case in BC on churches closed while restaurants are open. This case in Alberta is going to be different. We expect to be cross-examining the chief medical officer, Dr. Dina Henshaw, and for the first time in 12 months, she's going to have to answer some tough questions because all she's been getting in the last 12 months are easy softball questions from biased pro-lockdown media that don't ask her tough questions about things like how many lives are being destroyed by lockdowns, and what kind of a horrible impact are lockdowns having on our mental health, our physical health, the mental health of children, so on and so forth. So it's going to be a very important trial coming up in Alberta in May.
Now, I know that there's similar other cases that are in the queue, as I understand it, Manitoba, possibly New Brunswick as well. Do you see this case in Alberta as possibly being precedent setting for these other cases across the nation?
Everything is precedent setting. Now, when one province makes a ruling, if there's a court in Alberta that rules for or against government lockdowns or comes down middle of the road and says, well, they're partly okay, but partly not, that is not binding on courts in other provinces. However, it is persuasive. So every one of these cases is extremely important because if a Manitoba court, Alberta court, BC court rules against the government, that's something that the courts in other provinces look at and take note of, and they are heavily influenced by it.
Okay, so now I want to reel back the tape here just a little bit to James's situation here in Edmonton. Why the change? So early March, there was an appeal, an attempt to kind of actually to get him out a little bit early in anticipation for the May hearing. But then the switch up in terms of the dropping of the charges. What happened behind closed doors, John?
Just negotiations. We've got some very experienced criminal defense lawyers on staff. We had Leighton Gray and James Kitchen and Jay Cameron all worked on this, and a lot of legal research went into this. Jocelyn Gerke, another lawyer, did a lot of outstanding legal research. And there's some letters back and forth with the Crown on, what we think the law is, and working out, I guess, a solution that both sides could live with. Obviously, the government does not want to lose face. They don't want to be seen as just suddenly walking away from this after telling everybody that we need to have all these ridiculous restrictions in order to save lives. They can't just back down that easily and suddenly walk away from it. So it was a negotiated agreement so that Pastor Coates will, I believe, will be pleading guilty to one of the two charges of violating a health order, and we're proposing that he pay a $100 fine. The other one, we're sticking with our non-guilty plea to force the trial in May, and the Crown also agreed to withdraw the criminal charge of failing to adhere to an undertaking. So it was a negotiated agreement. Both sides. It's not perfect for either side, obviously. That's life. We negotiate agreements that both sides can live with. But I think it's a good agreement that gets him out of jail, and it gets him out of jail. This is crucial. It gets him out of jail without this requirement that he has to promise to abide by unscientific and unconstitutional health orders that are violating his rights and freedoms. That's the reason he was in jail. He could have gotten out, but he was not willing to make that promise to abide by unscientific, unconstitutional health orders. Well, now he should be, again, it's 99% sure, he's going to be able to get out of jail without having to make that promise to allow the government to violate his rights and freedoms.
Okay. So Erin, how has this been affecting your community? I know the last time that we spoke, you said that you've experienced actually a lot of growth during this season because people have been looking for a church to go to. Your church has been open at more than 15% capacity. What's been happening there in the last month at the congregation?
Well, we're very full. I think this has really done just that, has put the light on our church and has brought a lot of people who are really missing human contact and are wounded, and they need the church to live life normally. And so it's brought a lot of people to our church, both those who know the Lord and those who don't, which is exciting for us that they get to hear the preaching of God's word and get to see just what our church is doing and the impact in our community. So yeah, we have filled up, and for me, that's just such an amazing thing because it shows that the people of Grace Life Church and the people who want to come to Grace Life Church, they don't worship a man, they worship the Lord Jesus Christ. And so that's what's been exciting, I think, for me to watch, is that even when my husband is out of the picture, there will be another one of God's people who will step in to care for his sheep. So that's been just good for us to see. Obviously, we want James back and ministering to his people. I know Sundays have been really difficult on him. This past Sunday was really difficult. He actually called me when I was at church, and he misses them. They're his life. He counsels them. He disciples them. They're so much a part of his life. It was getting increasingly more difficult for him in there to not be with the people he loves the most.
Well, I got to say, I would love to be a fly on the wall the first Sunday that he's back. Hopefully this upcoming Sunday, I would not be surprised if there's a standing ovation involved in the whole mix, but I know people are going to be so excited to see him. With everything that you've walked through in the last few weeks, Erin, what would your message be to other pastors and leaders, spiritual leaders across Canada right now?
Sure. I mean, I think we know how this disease works now, who the most vulnerable are, and how we can work to protect them. But my advice, I get so many messages from people in different provinces, mainly BC, where the church is completely shut down, of just people who are really hurting. They really need their pastors caring for them. They really need to worship God. They really need to be together. So my advice would be to open your doors to pre-COVID restrictions. And if you're not quite there yet, wrestle with what's going on. And just, as studies are starting to come out, I was looking on Canada's mental health website, and it's saying that 1 in 10 Canadians are struggling with suicidal thoughts. In December alone, they had double the calls come in for suicide calls that they did from last December. Opioid addictions are going up, drug usage is going up, anything that people can kind of find to rely on, all of that is on the rise. We have a friend who's a police officer who receives multiple calls every time he's on shift in regards to suicide calls. And so our nation, I think I watched a video in the House of Commons where it said over 800,000 Canadians have lost their jobs, and then they're now talking about a third lockdown. So our nation is really hurting right now. So not only to take care of God's people, but to have your doors open to the nation of Canada, whatever city you're in, to show we have hope here. We have hope in the Lord Jesus Christ to help you live life, to get you through these difficult times. It was devastating for me to see on, I think it was Canada's suicide page, that the #2 killer of youth is suicide. And so we just have a really hurting nation right now. And so that would be my call. I don't want to be really careful how I address pastors, would be to open your doors and help those who may not even be in your church congregation, but your community, and reaching out to them.
Mm-hmm. Wow, well, these are definitely unprecedented days, and I know pastors that, they've got one of the toughest jobs in the nation right now, one of the most rewarding jobs. And also, as you already mentioned, John, there are differences province to province, and so we need to keep our spiritual leaders in prayer. All of them need so much discernment right now. So, John, I'm going to ask you a big picture question, okay? So visualize after May. I know the last time you and I talked, you said that you felt the tide was turning on public opinion with the pandemic, that people are starting to speak out, push back, share some of the types of insights like what Erin just shared there and that police officer. Where do we go after the James Coates situation? What's the future on all these things?
Well, I think the biggest lesson that, in my opinion, the biggest lesson we can take from this is, well, several. I don't know if this is the biggest, but if you fight a battle, you can win. If you don't fight a battle, you're guaranteed to lose. And I think Pastor Coates, whom I've never met, I haven't even spoken with him, but he's a hero because he chose to fight the battle that he was called to fight. And I think one of the biggest problems in Canada is this, utter unwillingness to fight battles. And it's this kind of a pathetic, cowardly, people-pleasing type of a spirit that seems to infect a lot of people. If we don't fight for our freedoms, we're going to lose them more and more. There's no reason to think that lockdowns are going to be lifted in April or May or June or July or August. There's no reason to think that, just by virtue of the passage of time, we're going to be able to celebrate this Christmas with our loved ones. That's naive if you think that that's just magically, automatically going to happen. People need to exercise their rights and freedoms, and that's what Pastor Coates did. He exercised his charter freedoms of conscience and religion and expression and association and peaceful assembly. He exercised those rights and freedoms. And when the government cracked down on him, and I think singled him out, there were business owners that did the same thing. They had a restaurant and they said, I'm keeping my restaurant open. I don't care how many tickets you give me. I'm not closing down my restaurant. And those people didn't go to jail. But when the government cracked down on Pastor Coates, he didn't back down. He fought the fight, and he's paid a heavy price, I think, by losing a month of his life, being away from his wife and kids and congregation. He's paid a very heavy price, and that took tremendous courage. And I think Canadians need to look to that as an example that, one, you need to exercise your rights and freedoms. And then number two, when the government cracks down on you in some way, shape, or form with a fine or even a jail term, that you stand your ground and you fight those battles. And that's what makes the difference. That's what turns things around. Not this this pathetic, cowardly, compliance with unscientific, ridiculous, and very harmful and destructive measures that are hurting so many people. It's not right to just blindly, unthinkingly comply with those measures when the government has not put forward the evidence to show that lockdowns work. And all the government data and statistics tell us that it's possible to protect those who are truly vulnerable to COVID, but allow everybody else to earn a living and support their families and not be thrown into unemployment and poverty. So I do see the tide turning, but we're far from where we need to be. We need a lot more people to be a lot more courageous in not complying with these unscientific and unconstitutional health orders that are literally destroying our country.
In the double standard that you pointed out there between businesses and churches, I know this is the same wrestle in BC right now. That's a very important question to ask, why the double standard? And I appreciate your heart, though, John, as well, because though I know you're fiery, you're a defender of constitutional rights and freedoms, I also know that you do care about Canadians, and that you highlight the reality that we want measures that work to protect the most vulnerable, and we all want to see the most vulnerable protected. We want to see all of us protected from COVID-19, and also we want to see our nation strong and prosperous on all tiers, and that's the big message that I've been hearing from both of you. And so, Erin, I've got to ask you this: is the church service on Sunday, is it going to be streamed live? Can people engage with you through the internet?
Yes, yeah, it's on our YouTube channel under Grace Life Edmonton. You'll be able to live stream that.
Okay, well, I'm sure there's going to be lots of eyeballs on the screen for that one. John and Erin, any final words to our viewers today? John, why don't you go first, and Erin, I'll give you the closing remarks here.
We have to think about what kind of a society we want, not only for ourselves, but for our children and our grandchildren. Do we want a free and prosperous society where the government respects citizens to assume responsibilities as adults? Or do we want kind of a soft totalitarianism where the government controls us and manages us as though we are cattle? That's the big choice that's facing us. And what we do in the next few weeks and months and years to defend our freedoms is going to determine what kind of a society we're going to leave to our children and grandchildren. So people need to think hard and be courageous.
Powerful. Erin?
Yeah, mine would be, first of all, just to say thank you to everybody, the JCCF, and all the work that they have done for us, but all of the people from literally around the world that have rallied behind us, have supported us and encouraged us. It's been a really dark time, but everyone who's reached out has just been such a huge encouragement to me. And I know in turn an encouragement to James, knowing that his family is receiving that kind of encouragement. And yeah, just to look at the situation, I mean, COVID is a real virus, but there's so much more to people. And my kind of like leaving message would be to consider your soul as well. Jesus Christ is the only way of salvation to reconcile sinners back to God through his death and resurrection. And so just to look at their soul and consider you have not just this life to live, but an eternity. And Jesus Christ has paid the penalty for sin for anyone who would turn to him and believe in his full work upon the cross and in his life and death and resurrection. So that would be kind of my last goodbye message, and just thank you, and to consider that.
Well, I got to say, one thing that I love about the both of you is that you're both extremely authentic, integrous. I believe you're both motivated out of compassion, but you also both stick to your message, which is absolutely amazing. Every history maker was focused. So thank you, both of you, for your courage and for your steadfastness. John, I know that you're at jccf.ca. Gracelife.ca is the church. And Erin, where else can people find you?
On Instagram at Erin Coates 80.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and joining me again today.
Thank you, Faitine.
Well, thank you so much for joining me again today for this online exclusive. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching this thinking, wow, I want to share this with my friends, well, obviously, if you're watching it on Facebook, just hit share. You can also check it out on YouTube at fateteen.tv. And we also have a free iPhone app that you can download to get this show, watch it on demand at any time, plus our previous shows as well. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to make sure that you never miss an episode. Lastly, I want to say a wholehearted thank you to all of our monthly partners and special donors. It is you that keep us on the front lines of bringing stories and interviews like this to the nation of Canada, and we're so grateful to you for your support. If you would like to join the team, or if you would like to give a special gift today, super easy. All you need to do is call 1-866-844-0844, and myself, my husband, or one of our team members would love to chat with you, pray for you, answer any questions that you have, or set you up to become a monthly partner if you like. Thanks again for joining me today. Check out more of our content online. And if you're watching us on TV, we hope to see you next week.